Okay, today we're going to be learning to play takenoko. This is going to be a rather simplistic overview. First of all, let me point out a few things people sometimes miss on this interface. You've got your actions down the left bar, you've got your objectives, and then completed objectives beneath that. On the right bar over here where the two players are, you can see what resources like Panda things they have collected, how many cards of each type are in their hand. But if you scroll even further down, you can see your opponent objectives, remaining plots, and remaining improvements. There are only so many of each improvement allowed, so you have to pay close attention to those kind of things during the course of the game. On the very first turn of the game, your only options are to do two things from your action list. So let's go over the action list. I'm not going to do every one of them right now. Draw 3 plots and choose one. That little tooltip's very helpful. Make sure you don't click it. There's no way to cancel the action once you click it in this game. I really wish they'd put an undo button because you haven't actually done an action yet. That said, the plots one, once you draw and look at 3 plots, yeah, that was never going to be undoable. But something like take an irrigation channel from the reserve, that should have been undoable. It doesn't change the game. It doesn't have any hidden information. Move the gardener and grow sections of bamboo. That one should be undoable if you haven't actually moved them. Same with the panda. Actually, maybe even those could be undoable if you have moved them and then decide you didn't want to, because that turn's easy to go back. But that's alright. It's complicated in games when you start having undos. This one you just have to be careful. Now the last one is pick an objective card. When you click this one, you actually get several options. Gardener, plot, and panda. The 3 main types of things. The entire game is about finishing these objectives, so I'm going to go over those first. The plot's objectives have some configuration that must be connected in the garden. It's important they must be irrigated. That's what these irrigation channels and that other action was all about. So that kind of thing is very important to pay attention to. Now, a lot of these, sometimes people get confused about orientation. They're like, oh, it has to be here, here, and here in this exact... No, I could do here, here, and here, where I just take and rotate this card. If I can take and rotate it, and it's still the exact same configuration, that's a valid objective completion. There are some that are 2 of each type. Let me see if I can draw one just for example. That's alright, it doesn't happen every time. There are 3 objectives that are a little harder to notice. So what I'm just going to do is take a plot and an irrigation, and I'm going to pass my turn before I talk about the other things. I need a few plots on the board before I can do anything. And now my opponent is going to play. He chose to pick a plot and chose to eat the bamboo from that plot. Very nice. Okay, now after the very first turn, you get this thing called a weather die, and this was a really great lucky roll for me because now I get to tell you about each of the weather. The weather die has 5 sides with a specific action on them and a 6th side with a question mark. I have rolled the question mark on the weather die over here, so I get to pick one. The weather actions are either sun. Instead of just doing 2 actions, I get to do 3 actions this turn, get a little bit more pumped into my turn. Rain. Before you start your turn, you get to choose one section of bamboo that is one plot on the garden and grow bamboo on it if it's irrigated. Wind allows you to take the same action twice. Normally on your turn you can only do each individual action 1 time, but instead your 2 actions for that turn, I could eat bamboo and eat bamboo again. I'll talk more about that. I haven't really covered that action yet, but I can take 2 plots maybe. Something like that. Then there's Storm. Storm allows you to move the panda. When you're moving the panda in this game, typically it's always in a straight line. But not with Storm. That panda is terrified and it's running for cover. You get to pick any place on the garden to send him running for cover, and then he panic eats because that's how cute he is. Now the last one is actually the most important one early in the game. I highly recommend paying attention to this. Cloud, pick improvement. When you choose the pick improvement, you get to pick between these 3 things that I was telling you below, that there are only 3 of each type. Sorry, I went too far. 3 of each type down here. The panda enclosure, the panda cannot eat any bamboo on a tile that has this improvement. Fertilizer. Every time bamboo would grow, instead of adding one section of bamboo, you add two. And watershed. The plot is irrigated. It does not have to have irrigation channels to it. It doesn't have to be anything. It's a really nice way for when you're trying to get plot objectives done far out in the garden, or you're trying to get a specific type of bamboo. You can just boom, plot is irrigated, now it has bamboo on it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so I talked about the plot objectives being these configurations. Now let's check on gardener objectives. I'm just going to show you the one because I don't want to pick one up. A gardener objective needs a very specific, actually I will pick one up after all. A very specific configuration of bamboo. This one needs me to have 5 yellow bamboo, but it must be on one that has a watershed improvement on that yellow tile. If it doesn't have the watershed yellow improvement, it doesn't count. This one must be a green fertilizer. It must have a fertilizer and it must have 4 shoots of bamboo. Some of these objectives actually require multiple pieces of the garden to have improvements. And just passing my turn over to him, and then I'm going to go through the rest of the actions once he's done. Okay, so again I got question mark. I can choose whatever. I'm going to pick sun so I can go through the actions. So plots. When I pick plots, I draw 3 and I get to put one on the garden. Now the rules for placement is it must be adjacent to 2 tiles. I cannot place this plot here because it would only be touching 1 tile in the garden. I can place it here because it's touching 2. I can place it here, 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 or here because the starting water area is always allowed to be placed from. It's just the starting thing to get the whole garden moving. You'd never be able to place a first tile if you didn't have an exception to that rule. But every other time you must have it adjacent to 2. Since I don't have any yellow objectives going on, I want to place this red tile or pink or whatever you want to call this down. Now, taking an irrigation, I've already done. It gives you an irrigation channel. Now what you can do with an irrigation channel is select it and choose to place it between 2 tiles coming from the center in order to go out. If there were a tile here that doesn't have a watershed, I need to have an irrigation channel down its length. So I would need an irrigation channel here or here. Just having one coming up to the tile is not enough water for that tile to grow. It needs an entire edge with water. Gardener. This one allows me to move the gardener, and wherever I put him, he will grow that tile and all adjacent tiles of the same color. If I had a yellow tile here, it would not have grown. Just because the gardener's next to it is not enough. But you'll see both of these green tiles grew because they're both irrigated and the gardener is adjacent to both. And then the last one is to eat a section of bamboo. You select the panda, move him in a straight line wherever you can. Where he ends up, he eats a bamboo if possible. Be very careful of these panda enclosures though, because a panda enclosure will not allow you to eat on that symbol. And you don't want to end up wasting your whole panda action. That's basically it. This board game arena uses the professional rule set. So the professional rule set is you cannot draw an objective that's already complete. If I already had this configuration of 3, what do you call that? If I already had this configuration of 3 green done, I would not be able to have drawn this objective if that were on the garden and irrigated. An important statement here though is the and irrigated. If there is a green tile there and it is not irrigated, then that's okay for me to be able to draw. Alright, waiting for him to give us the turn again. So right now, this 3 green is clearly done, right? This cluster? Nope, it's not irrigated. So I need to get an irrigation channel. I made too many error messages because I kept trying to do something that wasn't allowed. And I need to place an irrigation channel down its length. And now it immediately grows when irrigated or when placed next to water. So there will be a bamboo available to eat immediately. And now I can finish that objective. A common trick in this game is to wait to turn in your objectives until you need space to pick up a new. You can only have a max of 5 objective cards in hand, but you don't want your opponent to know how well you're doing. Kind of want to surprise them and spam out, I just finished 4 objectives in 1 turn, I win! The number of objectives you need to complete is based on the number of players. In a 2-player game, you need 9 objectives complete. In a 3-player game, you need 8. In a 4-player game, you need 7, I believe. Don't completely quote me on those. I don't play the multiplayer nearly as much as the 2-player because tournaments on this site are only 2-player. But I really like this game, and I picked it up and the Chibi's expansion for it physically. And I've enjoyed that too. It's added a little bit more depth of replay to it. If you'd like more detailed information about what tiles and objective cards are available, I have a list of them that you can go look at and some images that show exactly which objectives exist in the game. I also have a video that already exists showing a more in-depth explanation of advanced gameplay as you go. I just wanted to go over the basics of how to play. That's all it is. You try to finish each objective, get it done, and once it's done, then you can move on to turning them in and ending the game. I'm going to ask him just to pass his turn really fast. Alright, now I want to show you this. Improvement for a tile. If you try to place it on a tile that already has bamboo, you cannot place it on a tile that already has bamboo. It must be empty. I cannot place it on a tile that already has an improvement. Doesn't even matter that it was the same type, just any type of improvement I could not place there. But if a tile that's already irrigated, say I had the fertilizer tile and I wanted to get this, just pretend this is a fertilizer, I am allowed to drop it there. Irrigation channels, you can't start them far out, you must start at the center and work your way out. But you can work your way out in any configuration. I can take this same irrigation channel and draw it down this way, etc., etc. There are all kinds of things you can do with that. You're just going to try the best. Now, I mentioned that you cannot draw an objective that's already complete. The exception is Panda Objectives, because you have to turn in sections of bamboo for that. You're always allowed to draw a Panda Objective even if you already have those resources, because you're still going to have to turn them in. You still could have chose to do them for other things. There's quite a bit of debate in the original rulebook and the addendums to it on whether that's actually how that's supposed to play out. But that's the way they implemented it here, and that's the way I've always learned to play it. It is a very balanced and effective way to play it. Free tip, Panda Objectives are worth more for the number of actions it takes, whereas plot objectives, if you get several that have like the same color, where I can make the same arrangement and complete multiple objectives with it, is going to get you way ahead too. Gardening is the most risky, but has some of the best payoffs. They have huge value for these gardening tiles. These ones are not the most valuable gardening tiles. This is the weakest, and this is the second weakest, but they go all the way up to 8 points and can be huge swings in the game. I think that's everything. We've covered weather, we've covered the basic actions, the type of objectives. I guess we haven't really covered what a multicolored plot looks like. If I had an objective that had green, green, yellow, yellow, it would be, let me get him to give me the turn again. Come on. Pass that turn. Alright, give me a plot. I guess I'll eat something with the storm. If I had the green, green, yellow, yellow, it would want a yellow right here and a yellow right here. So 2 yellows next to 2 greens. The problem that people have is they sometimes think that's equivalent with a yellow here and a yellow here, because it's still 2 green next to 2 yellow. It's not the same, because no matter how you rotate that, I will never get it where the color on the right is higher up than the color on the left. I could have it instead the other way, where I put a yellow here and a yellow here, and the green is higher on the right and the yellow is lower on the left. Well, if I spin that and look from the other way, this is now a higher yellow on the right, quote, quote, if I spin this around 180 degrees. So that configuration is the same. You just have to be careful a little bit with the orientation of the multicolored ones. Pretty much everyone, myself included, their first game or two ended up doing a multicolored objective incorrectly, thinking they finished it, and then they're like, what? Why is it not letting me turn it in? Or, oh, they're now telling me I'm wrong, and they know what objective I'm trying to do, so they could block me. That's all you need to know about Takenoko. That'll get you started in playing it. I hope to see you doing it soon. I will definitely post follow-up videos of me playing this game. Enjoy!